Most of us have felt the urge to get away from it all. And then there's Brent Underwood, who's taken that concept to a whole new level, as Luke Burbank explains.
All right, it's day 2 here at Cerro Gordo. 6 months by myself.
8 months.
There might only be a few people on planet Earth who can say they've been more socially distant during the pandemic than Brent Underwood.
So I thought, hey, you know, what better place to socially distance than an abandoned town in the middle of nowhere? And so packed up my truck, I drove out here.
Here, perched on the edge of Death Valley, 8 miles up a winding dirt road, is the abandoned mining town of Cerro Gordo, California. Population, Brent.
Hello! Do you ever start to feel sort of like Tom Hanks in Castaway?
So I do. People think that it's a really lonely place, and it can be, but I think to combat that, I remind myself that a lot of people are lonely in the past year.
So where are we standing right now?
This is one of the original cabins.
Underwood isn't just Cerro Gordo's sole resident, he also owns it, all 380 acres. Back in 2018, he and some business partners bought it to turn it into a tourist destination by restoring the town and its old hotel.
It was 1.4 million. I didn't have anywhere close to that much, but I had enough to put down the earnest money deposit. So it was, let's secure this thing and let's figure out the rest later.
As it turns out, people have been taking a chance on Cerro Gordo ever since 1865, when silver was discovered here, high in the Inyo Mountains.
Things during the silver period were wild.
Roger Vargo is an expert on Cerro Gordo who co-wrote a book about it, along with his wife, Cecile.
We talk about a Wild West town right out of a Clint Eastwood movie. Various newspaper accounts had shootings once a week, stabbings, other kinds of violence.
At its peak in 1872, Cerro Gordo generated roughly $150 million, adjusted for inflation, in silver and lead mining. But, like all booms, things eventually went bust. By the 1930s, Cerro Gordo was all but abandoned. Over the years, a series of different owners lived here and maintained the town before 34-year-old Brent Underwood bought it.
How long do you think you're going to stay here?
A long time. During my time up here, my parents sold my childhood home. And so when people ask me what's home now, it's like, it's Cerro Gordo. You know, this is my home.
Underwood left his city life in Austin, Texas, where he ran a hostel, to live and work full-time at Cerro Gordo.
And then, slowly, I rebuilt the floor.
And it is very much a full-time job.
Do you know how to build things? Like, do you have a background in that?
No, I do not. And so I'm learning on the job training, if you will.
But of course, living in an abandoned mining town has its perks.
So 400 feet of ladder would lead you down to the 400 level.
Brent gets to explore the mines, which haven't been touched in decades.
And looky what we have here.
And the stuff that he finds?
I mean, I don't want to get anybody too excited too early, but there's definitely some garments over here.
It all goes into his museum.
The most common type of bottle you find here is the Lee & Perrins Worcestershire sauce.
Really?
Because the meat was so bad, they needed to put a lot of sauce on all of the meat that was here.
And when he finds cool things, Underwood is sure to put them on his YouTube channel, Ghost Town Living.
Wouldn't really be a mining adventure without finding one of those.
He shares both the highs and the lows of living in Cerro Gordo.
About 5 hours ago, around 2:30 in the morning, a fire burned down our hotel here at Cerro Gordo.
The videos have become so popular
We wanted to come up and meet you because we've seen your videos and think
that fans often trek up the mountain
So I just wanted to come meet you.
Thank you, that's awesome.
to volunteer or just tell Brent they love the channel.
Someone's chasing a dream. That's what I see. I see somebody who's able to do what others would only think about in the back of their mind. And you got this guy right here, and they're doing it.
Have you been pleasantly surprised how he's thrown himself into it?
Oh, absolutely. He's gained an understanding of Cerro Gordo that you can only get when you actually live there and experience it for an extended amount of time.
Of course, even his biggest fans eventually head back down the mountain.
This is Lola.
For now, Underwood's cats,
How are you?
goats, and alpacas
You're home. Be free.
will have to do for companionship. His priority, he says, is to rebuild that town hotel that burned down so he can start hosting paying customers. Who knows? Maybe Cerro Gordo has one last boom in it after all.
It was here before I was here, so I just see myself as the current chaperone, and to do my best, I'm willing to give it my all, you know?
When I first came out here, my biggest worry was, am I going to die? I mean, I've lived in a city my whole life. And the thing about it is, out here in the country, if something happens, it's gonna happen to you. And there's nobody out here to help you. The day after I bought this place, really the next day, someone had broken into the trailer, my little Airstream. They totally trashed it. And then I really did wonder, you know, what have I done? Well, we're in Cisco, Utah, which is a ghost town. It's high desert, which means it's a really harsh environment. In the summer, it's like over 100, and in the winter, it's below freezing. I would say it was about 3 years ago that I flew out here. I was going to Horseshoe Canyon, which is about 3 hours away from here. And when I first came, I thought, oof, I'm not sure that this is abandoned. But after I established that it was, then I had all kinds of other ideas. I like the idea, since this was a town at one point, to do an artist's residency out here. The desert draws a lot of artists because it's a really good creative space. You're not distracted by anything, actually. It's just, this is all there is. This is the house that I live in. It's a 1950 Spartan mansion. The person that I bought this from, he was an older guy. When I called him on the phone, I said, well, I don't have that much money, but here's what I have. And then he agreed to it immediately, which made me nervous. It wasn't that much money, but it was all that I had. Luckily for me, I come from a family of, now I don't want to say hustlers or anything, but I feel like we were a pretty scrappy bunch. And we were very much like raised to make use of the things that you have and what's around. Obviously, everything needs to be done here because when I got here, everything was falling apart. So I'm rebuilding this entire place, which takes a lot of time. This post office shut down in like the early 90s, and it was replaced by these P.O. boxes. As you can see, there's a lot of room for people to move in. This town was made to service the steam engine railroad, which is funny because there's no actual water here. Technically, it was abandoned during the 90s, but I mean, people started leaving like the late 60s. As a whole, it's just a pile of garbage. That's all it is. Yeah, I built this porch. All of this wood here is from the kitchen that I tore down behind my log cabin. I made all these windows myself. It's really hard to make a window. Oof! A lot of people are scared of the outhouse, which makes sense. I mean, you're hovering over a giant hole full of shit, so people don't really consider what it takes just to exist, as far as like what happens to your sewage, where do you get your water, and all that stuff, which is something I didn't really think about either when I came here, kind of, but not to the extent of like the actual reality of what do you use every day? The bathroom. So yeah, this is the Winnebago. This is hopefully gonna be the live workspace for the residency program. Obviously, it needs some work. The roof, the electric, the windows, I'm just happy that the door is still here, you know what I mean? People assume that because I'm living in a ghost town that I have nothing to do. I have rehab trailers and houses, I've built decks. This is what I'm here to do. Since I have to rebuild the roof anyway, and I'm gonna be tearing all this apart, is I wanna actually extend it and make a sleeping area up here. I have a lot of time to do that. Because in the desert, it's so sparse and there are very little rules. You know, it makes it more likely that a creative person would be able to do what they want there. And it's also like a good test of an artist to see whether or not they will do their artwork if left alone to it. Come on, monkey. This is a very conservative state, and it's a very religious state, and I would like to say to people that it's safe here for gay people. But I can't say that. Yeah, the flag's inside for now, which I feel a little bit ashamed of. 99% of the people out here have been very welcoming to me. And guys that you wouldn't assume that would be, you know, that way. My neighbor just brought me a whole bunch of ammunition. And people do look out for each other out here. And I have had to say, in certain circumstances, oh, my husband will be right back. So, yeah. Hey, Joe.
I got your water.
Thanks.
This one's leaking again.
Here she comes. That's all right. It can leak. Joe was one of the first people I met out here. There's a lot of people that kind of snoop around and stuff, and so I watched him. He was over there for a long time. I was like, what is that guy doing? He was like digging in the dirt. And I was like, okay, it's starting to get dark. I have to go over there and tell him to go. And he stands up and show him what you carry.
And I have my little midi gun.
But that's a serious gun. Mine looks like a toy. When you stood up and I saw your gun, I was like, oh, that's right.
This is Utah.
This is Utah.
Everybody has guns.
Everyone has a gun. And Joe has since then taught me how to shoot. And actually this handgun here, he gifted to me. And after we had a certain incident happen where he was like, you need a real gun. Yeah. And so. What was the incident? That'll have to, no.
No? All right.
No. Maybe another time. I've had some problems with people at night, and it gets really dangerous. There was a truck down the street, and I pulled up, and there's a big Confederate flag on the back, and there's flashlights, and a guy comes out of an abandoned building, and he's holding a gun, which is a different thing than keeping it in the holster. And the whole time I'm trying to explain to them that they need to leave, that they're on private property, he's holding a gun, which puts me at a disadvantage. Eventually, I got them to leave. But the last thing you want is somebody to come into your house at night because they think it's abandoned and they're drunk. And I didn't sleep for, I don't know, a week.
Out here by yourself, male, female, you need protection. This is still the Wild West here, literally. It's lawless. It's beautiful in the ways that it'll kill you.
The cowboy culture that we have as Americans is just sort of like a nostalgia thing. I carry a gun to defend myself. I'm not trying to make any kind of statement about freedom. Those guys that open carry, I'm sure they're not often in survival situations where they are actually going to need the gun, but I have to deal with things where I might possibly have to defend myself every day. It's this place which draws people. I put a lot of time and work into this, more so than, I mean, maybe that I expected even.
Eileen and I are both like fiercely independent, vastly different backgrounds, and now I've just got to see how the story of the girl from the city unfolds, who moved out here to the ghost town in the desert by herself, and I want to see how that ends, or doesn't end. But it's an amazing story, and I love stories, so I want to see hers.
I've had so many people say to me, oh, you're like a modern pioneer, which is funny, but kind of true. There are a lot of things that need to be done, but it's not impossible. And now that I've been doing this, I don't want to do anything else. That's for sure.